around backstage at all, like making my co-host.
Not whatsoever.
Snort laugh. It's been a good time. Anyway, I am very, very excited to welcome you to another special episode. We're just racking them up. We're just racking them up lately. Of the Cyber Queens podcast. This episode is all about empowering veterans in cybersecurity. We are having a conversation today with VetSec. I am very excited to welcome VetSec to the Cyber Queens. So welcome. As you may have heard from our episode with Keith Adams, so when I first joined cyber, again, everyone knows my story. I was a marketing professional who knew everything about marketing and nothing about cybersecurity. But I did start Googling like mad, like professional cyber groups for professionals. And I came across like my LinkedIn group searching veterans security, VetSec. I was like, what? Ooh, a place for veterans? Perfect, because that's probably going to be a really small group. And like they speak my speak, right? Like I have an automatic in because we've all been in those trenches together. So VetSec was the first group I ever joined where I asked many, many, many stupid questions, tackled people down, nailed them to the wall like Jello, and started like asking my entry-level noob questions. And that's how I became the hacker that I am today. So I owe a whole lot to VetSec, very special org to my heart. And we are joined by their chair of the board, Mr. Tom Marsland. Tom, welcome to Cyber Queens. Please tell us about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited. I've been the board chair of VetSec for about 3 years now. And prior to that, I served 22 years in the Navy, separated from the Navy. My retirement was actually May of this past year. And I'm working full-time as the VP of technology for a company called Cloud Range, where we do cybersecurity incident response training for teams and enterprise companies.
Very nice. Very nice.
By the way.
Sorry. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
My branch doesn't often count, so I don't really talk about it. Just kidding. I love all my airmen out there. So Tom, tell us about your military career very briefly and how you made the transition into private cyber.
Yeah, absolutely. My career was in nuclear power and the submarine force. So engineering operations, and towards the end of my career, a lot of it was spent doing training development as I grew more senior in the ranks. I taught at the schoolhouse that we taught the nuclear power school to the enlisted people there, and then culminated with my final tour as the assistant to the engineer, basically, of the last submarine I was on. Got to go to a lot of cool places, stepped foot at the North Pole, did all sorts of fun stuff while I was in. When I was transitioning out of the military, much like Maril, I started Googling where am I going to go? What am I going to do? And I always knew I had an interest in IT. I grew up loving computers, worked for my uncle in the summers at a software franchise company, helping set up client computers in their offices and doing the typical like crawl under desks and plug in cables work as a teenager.
That's not for me.
What attracted me to cyber was the mission side, the fact that there is a purpose really to it. And that's kind of what grew on me. While I was in two of my shore duties where I wasn't on submarines deploying, I got my bachelor's and master's degrees. Bachelor's at WGU, master's from the University of Charleston in cybersecurity.
Very nice.
And then just started searching for like, how am I going to be the most prepared that I can be so that I can, have a seamless transition. And so I started about 3 years before my retirement. And one of the first organizations I came across was VetSec. I joined in January of 2020 as a new member, and same thing, asking all of the questions that I'm sure they've heard a million times. One of their first partnerships was with an organization back then called Security.
Yes.
Acquired by INE. And I was one of the recipients for their Pentest Plus, or not Pentest Plus, EJPT. Junior Pen Tester course. Loved the mission, loved what they were doing, but they still hadn't really coalesced around the nonprofit side. They had formed a nonprofit, but we're like, we don't really know what we're doing with this thing yet. And then it's time for like their first board elections. And their first board elections were like, let's take all 1,500 people in the Slack and elect 5 people to run the organization. And you know how busy everyone in cyber is. So we had all of 3 volunteers for 5 positions. I had volunteered to be the secretary because I'm good at documentation. I like that sort of thing. And then during the elections, the person running for the board chair spot decided that he didn't want to do it anymore and dropped from it. And I've been there ever since. More of like a voluntold spot.
Very nice.
I have a serious question for you.
Please.
You said you made it to the North Pole.
Mm-hmm.
Did you meet Santa Claus?
Okay.
Did I have on a serious note, I have a picture.
Mission critical question.
Thank you for that introduction. You know, can you tell me really quickly, or the listeners, how were you? I know you said you were lost, but did you have that fear of not like belonging after coming out of the military for so long in cyber?
Absolutely. Honestly, that's still something I battle with today.
Really?
Mental health is a big focus of mine at VetSec, and we can talk more about the org a little bit too. But when I run across a lot of members who, when they tell their unit or the military or their service branch that they are leaving and they've made that decision, they're, I don't want to say shunned because that's probably a strong word, but they're kind of forgotten about. And so,
like, oh my God, you're leaving? What? We're all lifers. You're not a lifer? But,
right.
I mean,
and all of them are giving you advice on how to get out of the military, but none of them have actually.
Which is something they've never done. They've literally never done it.
Yeah.
Like the unsolicited parent advice. Oh, you're having a kid? Let me tell you how you should parent. That's
exactly. Yep.
Yeah. I was having that conversation with somebody the other day about how it's, you know, we don't help vets after they transition out. They actually need it before they get out. I think it should be ongoing, but I just wanted to ask that question because I feel like so many of our veterans in every industry are just, you know, in that position. Amber, go ahead. You were going to ask.
Yeah, thank you. I know, right? I never want to like interrupt people, but one of the questions I did have though, kind of to add on to Erica's, right? Especially in your experience, you've done this now. What do you see would be the best steps that the industry can take or organizations can take to kind of ease this transition and make veterans more welcome, more comfortable, more, you know, it's like I said, they can just kind of, it's more of a natural progression versus something that's more difficult. Like in your experience, what would you have done differently or suggested now?
I was very fortunate, and I am in a position that a lot of veterans unfortunately don't get to be in. So to speak from my point of view, you know, I had my last 3 years of service where I was home with my family every day. I wasn't deploying. I had a lot of time to research and try and figure that out. The things I would change would be more towards the military side of the house. There are programs that the military has in place to allow military members more time to work on their transition. But a lot of those get eschewed for the mission readiness, or we can't afford to lose them until they're out next week or they're out in a month. And so I would be a larger proponent of making those programs more required and less favorable or less voluntary at the commander's level. From the industry side, partner with more community-based organizations. I think the thing that I see lacking is the community. And VetSec for me, not just speaking as its leader, but VetSec for me bridged that for me and provided a place where I could speak to people who I knew had been through what I had been through.
There's a really good question in the comments since we're talking on the mental health issue, and it's from Brandon Parsons. He's asking, is mental health a problem, or is it actually vets just trying to find the fulfillment post a military career? That's a great question.
I think veterans not succeeding at finding that fulfillment leads to or contributes to the mental health problems that veterans face. I think mental health is a huge problem in the military. We have problems that range from, sexual assault and sexual harassment in the military that isn't enough done about. We have problems with a huge problem when veterans transition out of the military. Unemployment isn't really an issue. Veterans are actually employed better in their post-military careers than their civilian counterparts are. But underemployment is a huge problem.
But if we're not serving them, those employment that they do, the employment they receive it's null and void because they can't function. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's fine. Please. I gave a talk a while back to a military school I went to, our senior enlisted academy, about how you can be trained to do a job in the military, but because you don't have the civilian credentialing to do that job on the outside, you can't do it.
Yeah.
The same is that's true in cybersecurity and in the IT force in the military, where they will teach the knowledge, but the sailors, soldiers, airmen, Marines don't get any certifications. The big analogy I use is our Navy corpsmen, our medical practitioners in the service. On a submarine, we only have one person. They're an enlisted sailor. They're not a doctor, so they've gone through
And they do it all.
basically EMT training, essentially, but no certifications. But they could, they draw blood, they take care of us, they can even perform emergency surgeries because we're underwater on deployment. But then they leave the service and they can't do anything. They can't give an injection, they can't draw blood, nothing.
Yeah, well, they figure that free tuition makes up for that. Thanks for the balloons, Maril. But like
do it. I don't do it.
Hey, dang. Well, there
the
you go.
government feels like since you can get some sort of free tuition, which we don't need to go down that rat hole, but that probably makes up for it. But I never even thought about how they don't get certified. You could be a full-on doctor and have that experience, and the military doesn't issue you a cert. That's a great thing to call out.
I was gonna say maybe that's something and forgive me for my ignorance here, but I wonder if that's something where there's some kind of program on the civilian side, right, that takes that into consideration of, hey, as long as you can prove that you've done this or whatnot, we can kind of certify you faster than normal routes would take.
I would say there's certain programs like WGU, which Tom and I are both alumni of. Night owls.
Yeah.
And they give you the option to study and complete at your own pace. So while they don't necessarily give you credit for the things you've done, if you have the knowledge and you can apply it to the class and just test right out of it or complete the capstone and finish it, you can do that as fast as you're able to. But one of the things I'm going to go over in my speech, actually at VetSecCon, which we'll talk about in a minute, is that you do need to start early, like Tom did. He had a nice long runway to prepare, right? Because no one's going to find a job in cyber within 6 months. That's a very hard timeline. But also is teaching people how to translate their military experience to private and civilian applications. Like in the military, they're called modules when we complete a training. And you're like, oh my God, you completed module 7. That has weight, like in the military. But outside of that, we're like, where's your CEH? Where's your Sec Plus? Why don't you have these things? Like things that we understand. And yeah, it's a translation issue.
Interesting. That's I know I always forget about that, Maril, that how much of a badass you are and have been and all this knowledge that you have.
Wasn't a past life.
Well, and that's kind of another question that I was going to have, right? Is, some of the challenges that you face, right, when entering cybersecurity, how can you kind of deal with these challenges as they come up, right? Because I get the mental health piece of it, right? Because I'm a big proponent of mental health. I talk about this often. Something that we all three of us do. But there is some sort of sense of pride that maybe is missing when you go through failure after failure. Failure, I put that in quotations. When you're not getting the jobs that you want, and it's really hard, and you struggle with that, right? Because then you start to think, okay, what's wrong with me that I'm not able to get these jobs as quickly as I want? So how do you kind of go through those challenges? And what are things that help that you would recommend to people that are going through this now?
I think the biggest thing that helped me was truly being educated on the industry. And I see it with new members joining VetSec today. Everyone thinks they're going to be a program manager, an executive, or a pen tester. Those are every new member, right? And they don't recognize that I am doing a career change. And while I do have a lot of experience that we can help translate, that isn't going to start you at the bottom. You might have to take a step back. You are still changing careers, right?
The totem poles are different. Like I tell people, even if you're mid-level IT, right, they still say that's entry-level cyber sometimes. Like cyber is just a different beast. For me personally, I would say one of the reasons I didn't experience those roadblocks and why I was able to make so much professional progress so quickly after the military was because I was civilian trained first, right? So I went military, civilian, like kind of like in a domino effect. And I had that like customer service capability to like come in and build rapport with people and communicate with them in a non-military fashion. Or I could put the ABUs on and start talking to you like in the lingo speak. But I didn't look like a military member who couldn't take herself out of the military mindset. I could immediately apply and explain and talk to stakeholders and senior leadership. And, it's that, honestly, that soft skill of communication, that was a big one. And that's one of the things I think transitioning military members are missing, because I sit on the interview panel for Acquia. We a lot of the interviews we conduct, I'm one of the few people that conducts a lot of them. And when I see former military experience, I'm like, awesome, I know exactly how to read this. You're a badass. But when you hear them talk about it, I'm like, oh, no, you're framing that all wrong. Like, you're talking to them like they're one of you and they're not. Or I see people who were able to like refine themselves and give program manager level speak and narratives about things. So that's one of the barriers for sure.
So how does VetSec address those challenges and creates opportunity, like the opportunities for veterans?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. The biggest thing is that we focus on community. So that bridge of a place where people can go and talk. So we've grown our Slack platform from 1,800 members in 2020 to over 6,500 today.
Wow.
Insane.
We've got channels that range from, technical topics to, hey, can you give me help on my LinkedIn profile, to, hey, I'm prepping for an interview. What questions should I prep for? My favorite channel of all is our resume help channel, because anybody can throw a resume in there and get it literally ripped to shreds in about 10 minutes. And it's
in a good way, with love.
In a good way. Frank feedback, I would say, a little blunt at times, but all good feedback. So that's our main focus. But the other thing we do is we try and identify the quality training providers out there, and we seek partnerships with them so that we can provide that training at low or no cost to our membership. So we're partners. Try not to advocate for one over the other as far as the ones that we are partnered with, but we partner with Fortinet and their education outreach program. We partner with CompTIA as an academic partner, TCM Security and Heath and his organization. We've done previous partnerships with Hack the Box, Try Hack Me, and Level Effect, which is about the only boot camp in the industry that I would actually endorse.
Well, shout out to the orgs partnering with the people who need it, man.
Yeah,
nice.
for real.
Nice to see.
Absolutely.
So can you share with the audience and like highlight the achievements and contributions that VetSec has made to the community?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are actively placing anywhere between 15 and 25 veterans a month into roles right now. We are tracking that, really kind of crowdsourcing our Slack and just tracking the successes that we're having. But we work to share job listings in our channel with employers that have jobs that they're looking to hire veterans. And then we track those members that have applied and are successful. I have a success story in particular. A veteran of ours, Alex, who joined VetSec a couple of years ago, was kind of behind the scenes. He was a Marine logistics specialist, did 4 years in, then kind of bounced around between roles, wasn't really sure what he wanted to do, spent some time doing medical coding, chart coding for a while. He got a free seat to Level Effects Cyber Defense Analyst Bootcamp through our partnership and landed his first role in September as a GRC analyst.
Oh, that's amazing.
And awesome. he had gone through a lot of stuff. He had gone through, the military time, trying to figure out what he wanted to do, went through a divorce, and came out of that and reached out to us just last month, letting us know he'd landed a role in that spot. So
Yay.
That's amazing.
Well,
oh my gosh.
It's those single stories that you hear that really make it worthwhile.
Yeah.
Then you have me who's not behind the scenes at all. I'm out here like, thanks, VetSec Con.
Do you guys have like a platform, or are you mainly utilizing Slack for this?
So we do have a website at veteransec.org, and that is where our members can log in and find discount codes and all of the resources we provide. But we utilize Slack for our day-to-day. That's where all of our 6,500 members live, chat. If I ask a question in anything, I still do for my day job. I'm like, hey, I don't remember how to do this, and Google's not helping me. How do I do this? And I'll get 5 answers within 10 minutes that'll be more useful than anywhere else I would look. And then we also have a conference every year called VetSec Con that Maril is going to be speaking at. And that came out of COVID, really. In 2020, right before I came on the board, we did an internal Slack. They called it VetSec Con Junior, and it was like 8 members that were giving presentations on what they were doing in their day jobs for any of the VetSec members to attend and just learn more about the different facets of the industry and what people were doing. We took that idea and turned it into a conference that's open to the public, all virtual still.
So I could go if I wanted to or support it?
Anybody, absolutely.
Awesome.
We do 3 tracks. We do InfoSec topics, our technical track, as it were. We do a transition track, so resume reviews, interview preparation, how to build a good LinkedIn profile. And then our 3rd track is what we call our community track. And that's where we have our industry partners that are, how we feel are doing good in the industry, doing good in the community, giving back. They have a time to talk about what they're doing.
And that's also their biggest fundraiser of the year. So if you can afford to buy, it's free and open to the public, but if you can't afford to buy your ticket, those proceeds go directly to the nonprofit.
That's great.
I look forward to
promoting that on LinkedIn.
Yes.
And I had another question. So, and maybe it's my final question, depending on time, but, can you talk to us about, where you see long-term for VetSec, right? So what the future is, how you see the future being with cybersecurity and VetSec? Like, what's long-term goals there for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, our goal is always to grow. We have over 200,000 people separating from the armed forces every year. And while not all 200,000 of those are going to come into cyber, we want to build the best place for them to be if they are looking to get into cyber. So we're always looking to partner with more training providers. On a personal aside, I've gotten more involved in the lobbying and politics side of policies and encouraging the development of policies that are going to better support those military members. So there's a program the VA has called VetTech, where training providers can get money to pay for veterans to go through their programs. We've started looking at the data that those training companies are putting out and really kind of encouraging or discouraging members from attending different providers. So really becoming kind of an authoritative source more on those, because we've seen a lot of members get taken advantage of by a lot of those organizations, unfortunately.
That makes me sick.
Yeah.
But I knew you were going to say that.
Yep.
Yeah, because the next biggest token hire from women is veterans. Oh, we stuck a veteran on the team. Look at how diverse we are.
Yep. We see that a lot. And we're at the point now where we've submitted a FOIA request to the VA to get that data, because training providers aren't willing to share it. So we're trying to go down that realm a little bit too, but really just keep building, formalize more of our programs and partnerships and keep building.
You do have a question, which I think is along the same track. Does VetSec attempt to integrate with military transition seminars, or do you have anything affiliations with SkillBridge or any of the other things like that?
So we're discussing becoming a SkillBridge partner ourselves so that we could work to place military members into internships at companies. That's a long road to go down. As far as integrating with the transition seminars, that's a little bit of a can of worms. So one, they aren't as organized as you'd like to think they are. If I would like to give my contact information at a transition seminar up in Washington State, then I have to call the bases up there and talk to those people. And if I want to give it to a transition seminar down in Georgia, I've got to call them and speak to their people. There's no central point of contact. But also, the military doesn't like us enticing people away from the military, right? Recruiting and retention is a big part of what they do. Of course. So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Improving the lives of service members is a big part of what we do. So,
we want to provide the best services for those members for when they do decide to separate, right? Exactly. Everyone's going to leave the military at some point. We want them to be prepared when they do.
Yeah, whether you're forced out at your 20 or you leave before that.
Right. Absolutely. I served 22 years. I joined the Navy at 17. So when I was 39 and leaving, I had never written a resume before. I had never done an interview before. I didn't even know what the right clothes to wear to different interviews would be necessarily, right? Those are things that we don't think about, but you have 6 months typically to do that whole transition. I have a family of 4 children and my wife that I'm focusing on making sure I could support, not to mention all the VA, healthcare, disability, all that process. So there's a lot that they go through, and we just want to be the best resource for any of them that are looking to get into IT and cyber.
I can't say enough good things. You're a fabulous resource for me when I was, looking to make my break into private industry. And, I just want to say a little anecdote as we're coming into our last few minutes and wrapping it up before final takeaways. So after I was able to break into my first private cyber position, and then we all know I was promoted to pen tester within like the first 3 or 4 months, I went to a little local to Reno InfoSec conference hosted at the university, and I saw literally my entire old unit there. They were all there, and I was like, oh my gosh, how are you guys? Good to see you. They're like, yeah, what are you up to now? And I told them like all the certs I'd gotten, all the things I was studying, and all the things I had learned. And I'm like, what about you guys? They're like, yeah, we're still waiting for module 3. And I'm like, wow. So like the one of the problems is that it's so difficult for military members to get that professional progress that they can translate because you're on waiting lists. And like, I knew that I would progress faster on the private side than I would in the military because the resources are just available to you. You get a budget you can spend it how you want. You can target your learning, but in the military, you're told what to learn and when to learn it, which is a major restriction. So if anyone wants targeted, cheap or free things they can study alongside those, hit me up. But just wanted to say thank you, Tom, for coming to speak to us about VetSec today. It's an org that's very near and dear to my heart. One more time, please tell the good people about the free virtual conference, so you don't have to go anywhere, that you have coming up next Friday, and where they can register and where they can find you.
Absolutely. VetSecCon.com is the conference website, and the conference is talks Friday, Saturday, workshops on Thursday, the day before. Got an amazing lineup of speakers, and again, all free, all virtual. Tune in from your pajamas and your laptop.
Not all the speakers are fabulous. You can skip mine if you want. Just kidding. Somebody has to come to mine.
Maril is keynoting. You have to tune into that one.
Damn it. Yeah, I'll be keynoting. So if you want to come hear me speak about little bits of my story, some advice for transitioning vets, etc., feel free to tune in. I will be bright and early the first talk of the day. So you won't find me on any of the tracks, but I will be keynoting. I'm honored to keynote. Thank you so much, Tom, for asking me. I've done little talks at the other tracks in VetSec cons past, so I'm excited to be elevated to keynote this year. It's going to make me cry. But we are moving into our final segment, so we're going to go into final takeaways. I'm willing to go first, unless, Tom, you want to go first. Do you have any final takeaways for anyone in the audience, transitioning military members or orgs who can support them?
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. My biggest statement that I'd say to anybody out there, whether you're military, veteran, transitioning, or somebody else who's watching this and looking to get into the industry, is you're not alone. A lot of people have done this before and done it successfully. So I have not found a person there that isn't willing to help if you take the time to ask. I know that's true of everyone on this podcast. I've seen it. Just reach out and ask for help and take that next step if you need it. And thank you so much for having me. Please check out VetSec if you remember, and VetSecCon.com next week.
I'll go after Tom. So my final takeaway is, thank you, Tom, by the way. My final takeaway is what we always say, the advice we give to people trying to come into cyber. Find somebody that is similar, that's doing something similar, or like a veteran that you could follow or ask for advice if you don't know who VetSec is or you don't want to go to them. But always find like somebody you could follow, or like a mentor or a coach, because reaching out and asking for help is the biggest challenge most of the time. And then the next challenges come. So I would just say, look for somebody who is, like-minded. And organizations, please, please, please get involved with VetSec, because this is an amazing organization. And I will personally be taking an action item to get involved.
Yeah, and I'm going to go right after Erica. She mostly stole mine, whatever.
I know, everybody stole mine.
Yeah, the see it to be it thing, right? So if you don't know how to talk about your experience, if you don't know what those soft skills you might need, or if you don't know where you need to refine yourself, if you're a little rough around the edges, if you've never written your resume, if you've never had to answer interview questions, if these are all things that you need, then definitely reach out to someone who's been where you are and is where you want to be. People like me, people who have made the transition and made professional progress in their private career already, cyber career already. We are here and available to reach back and help you. Also, again, don't think you're going to come in and just be a pen tester or a PM right away. Take the analyst level jobs. This guy did a boot camp and now he's a GRC analyst. Those analyst level jobs are where you get the best exposure to figure out where you want to niche and become an SME for your org. So please take the entry level opportunities and see them as a means to an end.
Yeah. And then I guess I will go last, and I will, of course, bring up the soft side of the conversation, right? I think, as you know, we're talking about mental health this month anyway. That's a big deal, right? And I do feel like this Slack channel, I don't know if it necessarily, if you guys have like a channel that's specific to that side of it, or being able to connect with people. Okay, perfect. So even better. So then I would encourage all of my network specifically, and anybody watching this, to join that, and just know that you're not alone in it, right? In a different way, right? So I think it's important to make sure that we are all here for each other. And I encourage all the organizations that follow us as well to, like Erica and Maril said, to really take ownership and try to start a partnership with you guys. So, and I appreciate you being on today. And again, thank you for your service.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom. All righty. That has been another episode of Cyber Queens. Thank you so much for spending your Friday with us. We love and appreciate you. Please like, share, and subscribe. Both us and VetSec. It is absolutely free and the #1 way you can support both of us. Hope to see you at the virtual con, VetSec Con, next week, bright and early. And with that, the Cyber Queens are out. Bye.
Bye.